During a surprise visit to her daughter's school, a mother noticed something strange about her daughter's lunch. When she saw what the teacher was serving just for her black daughter, her hands started shaking. Lisa Johnson's hands gripped the steering wheel as she pulled into the visitor parking space at Riverside Private School. The clock on her dashboard read 11:45 a.m., 15 minutes before her daughter's lunch period. Her stomach knotted as she grabbed her purse from the passenger seat. The school's brick facade loomed ahead, its windows reflecting the midday sun. Lisa smoothed her navy blazer and checked her reflection in the rearview mirror, adjusting her collar. A security guard stood at the entrance, clipboard in hand. "ID, please," he said, his voice flat and professional. Lisa pulled out her driver's license. "I'm here to have lunch with my daughter, Jasmine Johnson. 6th grade." The guard checked his list, made a mark, and handed her a visitor's badge. "Main office first. They'll need to verify." The hallways were quiet except for the distant sound of teachers' voices behind closed doors. Lisa's heels clicked against the polished floor as she made her way to the office. A woman with graying hair sat behind the desk, typing. "Can I help you?" she asked without looking up. "Yes, I'm Lisa Johnson, Jasmine's mother. I'd like to join her for lunch today." The secretary's fingers stopped moving. She looked up, her expression shifting slightly. "Oh, we don't usually have parents join for lunch without prior notice. Is there a policy against it?" Lisa kept her voice steady. "Well, no, but then it shouldn't be a problem." Lisa smiled, but her eyes remained fixed on the secretary. The woman's mouth tightened. She reached for the phone. "Let me check with Principal Thompson." Lisa waited, watching the second hand tick on the wall clock. Her mind drifted to last week's parent-teacher conference. Jasmine's math teacher had praised her work, but mentioned she seemed different lately. More withdrawn. The secretary's voice pulled her back. "Principal Thompson will meet you in the cafeteria. Please wait there." The cafeteria doors were propped open when Lisa arrived. Tables were still empty, but kitchen staff moved behind the serving counter, preparing for the lunch rush. A tall man in a blue blazer stood near the entrance, his posture rigid. "Mrs. Johnson." Principal Thompson extended his hand. "This is unexpected." Lisa shook it briefly. "I had a light workload today. Thought I'd surprise Jasmine." He gestured to a table near the wall. "You can wait here. 6th grade lunch begins in 5 minutes." Students began filing in, their chatter filling the space. Lisa scanned the crowd for Jasmine's yellow sweater, her favorite. She spotted her daughter in line, standing slightly apart from her classmates. "Hey, baby," Lisa called out, waving. Jasmine's head snapped up, her eyes widening. She glanced around before walking over, her shoulders tense. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "Surprise lunch visit. Thought we could eat together." Jasmine shifted her weight. "You didn't tell me you were coming. That's what makes it a surprise." Lisa touched her daughter's arm. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, Jasmine looked over her shoulder at the lunch line. "I need to get my food. I'll come with you." "No," Jasmine said quickly. Then, softer, "I'll get it and come back." Lisa watched her daughter join the line again. Principal Thompson stood near the servers, his eyes moving between students as they received their trays. Something about his attention seemed off. A group of parents sat at a table near the windows. Lisa recognized them from PTA meetings. Their voices carried. "Did you see what they're serving today? It's the same as last week. Different menus for different needs." "Well, I suppose they know what they're doing." Lisa's neck prickled. She watched the students move through the line. Most received plates with grilled chicken, fresh vegetables, and what looked like quinoa. But some trays, she noticed, carried different meals entirely. Jasmine returned with her tray. Lisa stared at the contents. A plain hamburger, fries, and a small portion of canned fruit. No vegetables. No options. "Is this what you usually get for lunch?" Jasmine poked at the burger with her fork. "Sometimes." "What about the chicken the other kids have?" "This is fine, Mom." Lisa noticed Principal Thompson watching them. He smiled and nodded in their direction before turning to speak with a cafeteria worker. "Baby, are they giving you different food than the other students?" "Mom, please." Jasmine's voice was barely a whisper. "Not here." A boy walked past their table, his tray laden with the chicken meal. He glanced at Jasmine's plate and smirked. Lisa felt heat rise in her chest. Has this been happening a lot? Can we talk about something else? Jasmine hadn't taken a bite. How's work? The rest of lunch period passed with forced small talk. Lisa watched other students eating, noting patterns. White students with fresh, varied meals. Black students with simpler, processed options. Her hands began to shake. When the bell rang, Jasmine stood quickly. I have to get to class. Wait. Lisa caught her hand. You know you can tell me if something's wrong, right? Jasmine's eyes darted around the cafeteria. Everything's fine. Please don't make it weird. She hurried away, leaving her barely touched lunch behind. Principal Thompson appeared beside the table. I trust you enjoyed your visit, Mrs. Johnson. Actually, I have some questions about the lunch program. His smile didn't reach his eyes. All our meals meet state nutritional guidelines. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting. Lisa watched him walk away, her mind racing. She gathered her purse and stood, but her legs felt heavy. The cafeteria had emptied except for workers clearing tables. One of them reached for Jasmine's tray. Wait, Lisa said. She took out her phone and quickly photographed the remains of the meal. The worker paused, then continued cleaning without meeting her eyes. In her car, Lisa sat with her hands on the wheel, not starting the engine. She pulled out her phone again and scrolled through her photos. Jasmine's hamburger and fries next to remembered glimpses of other students' fresh, colorful meals. Her finger hovered over the delete button. Then she created a new album instead. She had to be sure. She had to come back tomorrow and see for herself. Because if what she suspected was true, Lisa's jaw clenched as she started the car. She'd learned long ago that some things you have to see twice before you can believe them. And some things, once seen, demand action. She pulled out of the parking lot, already planning tomorrow's lunch visit. This time, she wouldn't sit so quietly. Lisa arrived earlier the next day, parking her car at 11:30 a.m. This time, she chose a spot with a clear view of the cafeteria windows. Her phone lay on her lap, camera app open. The same security guard stood at his post, eyebrows rising in recognition. Back again, Mrs. Johnson. Yes. She held out her ID before he could ask. Another lunch with my daughter. He hesitated longer this time before making his mark. You'll need to check in at the main office. I remember. The secretary's tight smile told Lisa she wasn't welcome. Still, no policy against parent visits meant another visitor's badge. This time, Lisa didn't wait for Principal Thompson's escort. She walked straight to the cafeteria, choosing a different table, one with a better view of the serving line. Kitchen staff bustled behind the counter, arranging food trays. Lisa noticed them organizing two distinct sets of meals. Her fingers tightened around her phone. Mrs. Johnson. Principal Thompson's voice came from behind. 2 days in a row. How? Dedicated? I believe in being involved in my daughter's education. Every aspect of it. He remained standing, blocking part of her view. You know, we have a very active PDA. They meet monthly. I'll keep that in mind. Lisa shifted in her seat to see around him. Would you excuse me? I'd like to wave to my daughter when she comes in. He didn't move immediately. Of course. Enjoy your lunch. Students began flooding in. Lisa watched as the first group reached the serving counter. A white girl in a plaid uniform skirt pointed to the grilled chicken. The server smiled, adding extra vegetables to her plate. Then came Michael, a black student from Jasmine's class. He didn't point or choose. The server turned to a different station, returning with a pre-plated hamburger similar to yesterday's. Lisa's phone camera clicked quietly. Once. Twice. Mom? Jasmine stood there, face flushed. You're here again? Thought we could make it a tradition. Lisa patted the seat beside her. Get your lunch, baby. I'll wait. Jasmine's shoulders slumped as she joined the line. Lisa recorded a video, keeping her phone low. The pattern continued. White students choosing from fresh options. Black students receiving pre-plated meals. A cafeteria worker with graying hair and a name tag reading Margaret noticed Lisa watching. She ducked behind the counter, emerging moments later with Principal Thompson beside her. Jasmine returned, carrying the same meal as yesterday. Mom, people are staring. Let them. Lisa studied her daughter's tray. Jasmine, do you ever get to choose what you eat? It's fine. I'm not even hungry. That's not what I asked. A group of students at the next table whispered, glancing their way. One girl, blonde hair, designer backpack, spoke loudly enough to carry. I guess some people just prefer that kind of food. Jasmine stared at her lap. Lisa felt her daughter's shame, like a physical blow. You know what? Lisa stood. I'm going to get some lunch too. Mom, don't. But Lisa was already walking to the serving line. Margaret's eyes widened. I'd like the grilled chicken, please. With vegetables? Margaret glanced at Principal Thompson, who had materialized nearby. I'm sorry, we're running low? Really? I just saw you serve it to several students. Perhaps a hamburger instead? Principal Thompson suggested smoothly. No, I'd prefer the chicken. Lisa's voice carried. Other students turned to watch. Unless there's some reason I can't have it. Silence stretched. Finally, Margaret turned to the chicken station. Don't. Principal Thompson's quiet command stopped her. We need to reserve those portions for students with meal cards. I see. Lisa pulled out her phone, making no effort to hide it. And how exactly do you determine which students get which meal cards? His face hardened. Mrs. Johnson, if you have concerns about our lunch program, my office would be the appropriate place to discuss them. Oh, I have concerns? Lisa took another photo of the serving stations. Many of them. Mom? Jasmine appeared beside her, practically vibrating with anxiety. Please, can we just sit down? Other parents in the cafeteria watched the exchange. Lisa heard whispers, saw phones being pulled out. Your daughter seems uncomfortable, Principal Thompson said. Perhaps it would be best if she's uncomfortable because of what's happening in this cafeteria. Lisa's voice was steel. And we both know exactly what that is. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Mrs. Johnson, you're disrupting lunch service. I'll have to ask you to leave. Fine. Lisa turned to Jasmine. Baby, do you want to come with me? Jasmine's eyes darted between her mother and the principal. I have class after lunch. Of course. Lisa touched her daughter's cheek. We'll talk later. As she walked out, Lisa heard snippets of conversation. Did you see? Always causing trouble. Well, they're kind of food. She stopped at the cafeteria door, turning back to take one final photo. Principal Thompson stood by the serving line, arms crossed. Jasmine sat alone at their table, burger untouched. In her car, Lisa reviewed the photos and videos. Clear evidence of different meals, different treatment. Her hands shook as she created a new folder on her phone, school lunch documentation. A text from Jasmine lit up her screen. Mom, please don't come back tomorrow. Lisa's throat tightened. She started typing. Baby, I can't ignore. A knock on her car window made her jump. Principal Thompson stood there, face stern. She lowered the window an inch. Yes. Mrs. Johnson, I want to be clear. While we welcome parent involvement, disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. Discrimination won't be tolerated either. His smile was cold. That's a serious accusation, one you should consider very carefully before making. Is that a threat? A recommendation? For everyone's benefit. He straightened, especially Jasmine's. Lisa watched him walk away, her heart pounding. She looked at her daughter's text again, then at the photos she'd taken. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow she'd sit quietly and observe. Document everything. Because Principal Thompson had just made a crucial mistake. He confirmed her suspicions weren't paranoia, and he'd threatened her daughter. Lisa started her car, hand steady now. She had proof something was wrong, but she needed more, needed to see exactly how deep this went. Tomorrow, she wouldn't cause a scene. Tomorrow she'd watch and wait, and then she'd make them answer for every single plate. The third day, Lisa chose a different approach. Instead of using the main entrance, she parked near the gym where parents entered for sporting events. The security guard there was younger, less familiar with the recent cafeteria tensions. I'm here for the 6th grade parent lunch program, Lisa said confidently, showing her ID. He waved her through without checking any list. Instead of heading to the cafeteria immediately, Lisa slipped into the empty gymnasium. Through the side door, she had a clear view of the cafeteria's back entrance, where kitchen deliveries arrived. She'd get a different perspective today. At 11:15, a cafeteria worker rolled out 2 sets of covered trays. Lisa zoomed in with her phone camera, catching the labels, standard lunch and alternative menu. Her hands trembled as she typed notes, separate preparations. Pre-planned segregation. The cafeteria began filling up at 11:45. From her vantage point, Lisa could see everything while remaining partially hidden behind the gym door. Principal Thompson stood at his usual post, but today he carried a clipboard, making marks as students entered. Jasmine walked in with two other girls, both white, who peeled away to join the main lunch line while her daughter headed to the alternative station. Lisa's jaw clenched. "Hey, new girl," a cafeteria worker called out to a black student Lisa hadn't seen before. "Your line is over here." The girl looked confused. "But this is your assigned line," Principal Thompson interrupted, pointing to his clipboard. "We have a system here." Lisa's phone recorded everything. Her evidence folder was growing, but she needed more. Needed to catch them saying it outright. A commotion drew her attention. Near the main serving line, a black student, probably 7th or 8th grade, stood arguing with Margaret. "I want a chicken. My parents paid for the full meal plan." Margaret glanced nervously at Principal Thompson, who strode over immediately. "Is there a problem here?" "Yeah, there's a problem," the boy said. "They won't give me the same lunch as everyone else." Principal Thompson placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, steering him away from the line. "Come with me. Let's discuss your special dietary requirements." Lisa couldn't hear the rest of their conversation, but she watched the boy return to the alternative line, head down. The lunch period was halfway over when Jasmine finally spotted her mother. Her eyes widened in panic, but Lisa pressed a finger to her lips, shaking her head slightly. Jasmine gave a tiny nod and turned away, pretending she hadn't seen her. "Margaret," Principal Thompson's voice carried across the cafeteria. "Status report? Running low on standard meals, sir. Should I start serving from the reserves?" No. Maintain the designated distributions. We don't want to confuse things." Lisa's camera caught it all, but she needed more. Needed something undeniable. Her chance came 20 minutes later. Jasmine had finished eating and was returning her tray when Principal Thompson stopped her. Lisa crept closer to the gym doorway, phone ready. "Miss Johnson," he said, loud enough to carry. "I noticed your mother hasn't joined us today." "No, sir." "Good. Much better this way, isn't it? When everyone knows their place?" Jasmine stared at her feet. "After all," he continued, "we provide food for your kind. Special accommodations. Some might even say we're being too generous." The words hit Lisa like a physical blow. Her phone nearly slipped from her shaking fingers, but she kept recording. "What did you just say to my daughter?" The words left her mouth before she could stop them. Heads turned as Lisa strode out of the gymnasium, phone still raised. Principal Thompson's face darkened. "Mrs. Johnson, this is becoming harassment." "Say it again," Lisa challenged, walking closer. "About food for your kind. Say it for the camera." "Mom, please," Jasmine whispered. Everyone's staring. "Security," Principal Thompson called out. "We have an unauthorized visitor." "I'm a parent," Lisa said loudly. "Here to document systematic discrimination against black students." Would anyone else like to comment on the special accommodations they've noticed? The cafeteria fell silent. Students frozen mid-bite. Staff standing still behind counters. "You're upsetting the children," Principal Thompson said, "and making baseless accusations. I have 3 days of photos and videos. Nothing baseless about evidence." Security guards appeared at the cafeteria entrance. Principal Thompson smiled coldly. "Mrs. Johnson, you're about to be escorted from the premises. I suggest you consider carefully what actions you take next. Your daughter still has to attend school here." Jasmine stood between them, tears streaming down her face. "Mom, let's just go. Please." Lisa looked at her daughter, really looked, saw the shame, the fear, the daily humiliation she'd been enduring. Anger rose in her chest, hot and clarifying. "No, baby." She wrapped an arm around Jasmine's shoulders. "We're not going anywhere. This stops now." She raised her phone higher as the security guards approached. "Mrs. Johnson," Principal Thompson started. "My daughter deserves better than food for her kind." Lisa's voice carried to every corner of the cafeteria. "Every child here deserves better, and I'm going to make sure they get it." "Remove her," Principal Thompson ordered. As the guards took her arms, Lisa looked directly into his eyes. "I have everything I need now. Thank you for making it so clear. Mom, Jasmine called out as Lisa was led away. It's okay, baby, Lisa called back. Everything's going to be okay now. In the parking lot, the guards released her arms. Don't return without administrative approval, one said gruffly. Lisa got in her car, hands steady as she saved the new video. Then she pulled up her phone's keypad. 3 numbers. 911. She took a deep breath and pressed dial. Because some things, once seen, demand action, and Lisa Johnson had seen enough. 911. What's your emergency? Lisa's voice remained steady. I need to report discrimination at Riverside Private School. I have evidence of racial segregation in their lunch program. A pause. Ma'am, while concerning, this might not qualify as an emergency. They're denying children equal access to food based on race. It's been systematic. I have documentation. Another pause. I'll connect you with an officer who handles civil rights complaints. 20 minutes later, Officer Sarah Chin sat across from Lisa in a Starbucks near the school, reviewing the videos on Lisa's phone. This is concerning, Officer Chin said, frowning at the screen. But private schools operate under different regulations than public ones. It complicates things. They receive federal funding, Lisa countered. That means they're bound by anti-discrimination laws. True. Officer Chin made notes in her pad. We'll need statements from other parents. Are any willing to come forward? Lisa's stomach tightened. I can try to find some. Without multiple complaints, they'll claim these are isolated incidents. Officer Chin handed back the phone. Or that you've misinterpreted their dietary diversity program, or whatever they'll call it. So they just get away with it? I didn't say that. Officer Chin pulled out a business card. Build your case. Get more evidence. Find other parents. I'll help how I can. Lisa's phone buzzed. A text from Jasmine. Principal Thompson called Daddy. He's really mad. Lisa's hands clenched. Marcus, her ex-husband, had fought her decision to send Jasmine to Riverside. Too expensive, he'd said. Now she had to deal with him too. Her phone rang. Marcus. What the hell, Lisa? You didn't wait for hello. The principal says you're harassing staff and disrupting classes. They're discriminating against our daughter. The school we can barely afford? The one giving her opportunities we never had? That school? They're feeding her different food than white students. Treating her like what? They're feeding her? Aren't they? She's getting an education most black kids can't get. Lisa's voice hardened. So, she should accept discrimination because it comes with a side of privilege? You're going to get her kicked out. Is that what you want? I want her treated equally. Marcus sighed. Just don't make things worse. Please. The line went dead. Lisa stared at her phone, then at Officer Chin's card. Build your case, she muttered. Time to get to work. The school board meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. Lisa arrived early, laptop ready. During lunch, she compiled her evidence into a presentation. Photos, videos, dates, times. Board members filed in all white, mostly male. Principal Thompson sat in the front row, arms crossed. Mrs. Johnson, the board chairman said, you requested time to discuss cafeteria concerns? Concerns about systematic racial discrimination, yes. Murmurs rippled through the room. Lisa connected her laptop to the projector. On Monday, I noticed, I'm sorry, the chairman interrupted. But we don't allow recordings or photographs in board meetings. These are evidence of discrimination. They're unauthorized recordings of minors on school property. We could pursue legal action. Principal Thompson smiled slightly. So you're refusing to view evidence of discrimination? Lisa asked. We're protecting student privacy, the chairman said smoothly. Now, if you have specific concerns about the lunch program, for 40 minutes, Lisa presented her case. Without visuals, she described what she'd seen. The separate lines, different meals, Principal Thompson's comments. Board members listened with polite disinterest. Thank you, Mrs. Johnson, the chairman finally said. We take all parent feedback seriously. Principal Thompson, would you like to respond? Thompson stood. Riverside prides itself on accommodating diverse dietary needs and cultural preferences. Some students prefer familiar comfort foods. Others choose our health-conscious options. All meals meet nutritional guidelines. Students aren't choosing, Lisa interrupted. They're being segregated. That's a serious accusation, Thompson said. One you failed to substantiate. Because you wouldn't let me show. Thank you both, the chairman cut in. We'll review the lunch program policies. Meeting adjourned. Lisa sat there as people filed out. Her evidence folder useless. Her complaints dismissed. A hand touched her shoulder. An older black woman, one of the cafeteria workers. I'm Ruth, she whispered. Come to my car. There's something you should see. In the parking lot, Ruth pulled out a worn notebook. I've worked here 12 years, she said. Started keeping records 3 years ago, when they implemented the dual menu system. Lisa's hands shook as she read Ruth's neat documentation. Dates, meal differences, student classifications. Why didn't you say something? Single mother, 3 kids. Need the job. Ruth's eyes were tired. But I kept notes. Thought someday someone would need them. Lisa took photos of every page. They'll know it was you, she said. Ruth straightened. Let them. I'm tired of serving shame with a side of fries. Lisa's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Saw your presentation. Same thing happened to my son last year. Have documentation. Want to help? Then another, my daughter too. What's the plan? Lisa saved the numbers. Started a group text. Her phone rang. Officer Chun. Got 3 complaints filed today, she said. Parents mentioned your name. Want to come by tomorrow to make an official statement. Lisa looked at Ruth's notebook. At the growing text group. Yes, and I'm bringing evidence. That night, Jasmine sat on Lisa's bed, shoulders hunched. Everyone's talking about it, she whispered. Some kid said I should transfer. That mom ruined everything. Lisa pulled her daughter close. Baby, look at me. Did I ever tell you about my first day of school? When they made all the black kids sit in the back. Jasmine shook her head. My mama raised hell. Embarrassed me something awful. But she taught me something important. Sometimes making things better means making people uncomfortable. I just wanted to fit in. You deserve better than fitting into discrimination. Lisa wiped Jasmine's tears. We all do. Her phone buzzed again. Another parent wanting to help. Lisa held her daughter tighter. Change is coming, baby. Might get harder before it gets easier. But we're not alone anymore. Because that's what Thompson didn't understand. He thought he could isolate them. Break them down one lunch tray at a time. But he'd forgotten something important. When you hurt one child, you answer to every mother. And mothers? They don't fight alone. The next morning hit Jasmine like a wave. She stepped off the bus, backpack clutched to her chest, and faced a wall of stairs. Whispers followed her through the hallway. Former friends turned away. Her locker had been decorated overnight. Not with birthday wishes or friendship notes, but with lunch menus taped all over it. In first period, no one sat next to her. By third period, someone had written troublemaker on her desk. Lisa's phone buzzed during a client meeting. Mom, can you pick me up? Please. She found Jasmine in the nurse's office, claiming stomach pains. One look at her daughter's face told her the real story. Baby, what happened? Nothing. Jasmine wouldn't meet her eyes. I just don't feel good. The nurse handed over the sign-out sheet. Perhaps a day at home would help. Things are a bit tense right now. In the car, Jasmine finally broke. Katie said I'm not invited to her birthday party anymore. And Madison moved seats in math class because her mom said I'm dangerous. Dangerous? Lisa gripped the steering wheel. Because you're trying to get the school shut down. Everyone says their parents are talking about it. Lisa pulled into a Dairy Queen parking lot. Wait here. She returned with 2 chocolate sundaes. Some problems needed ice cream first. Remember in 4th grade, Lisa said, when you told me about that girl being bullied? What did you say then? Jasmine poked at her sundae. That staying quiet makes you part of the problem. Exactly. Now, eat your ice cream. Then we're going to talk about what happens next. Lisa's phone lit up with messages from other parents. My son got pushed in gym class today. Teachers are ignoring raised hands from certain students. They're punishing our kids for what we're doing. Then a different message from Ruth, the cafeteria worker. They fired me this morning. Budget cuts. But I made copies of everything first. Come into your office at 2. Lisa looked at Jasmine, still fighting tears over her sundae. Baby, would you want to transfer schools? We could, no. Jasmine sat straighter. Running away means they win. Pride bloomed in Lisa's chest. That's my girl. At 2 p.m. sharp, Ruth arrived at Lisa's law office carrying a thick manila envelope. 12 years of service, she said, dropping it on Lisa's desk. Terminated without warning. But they don't know what I know. Inside were years of ordering records, menu plans, internal memos about dietary segregation protocols. They called it cost management, Ruth explained. Said certain students' families had different budgetary considerations. But we all pay the same tuition. Exactly. Ruth's smile was grim. I've got the payment records to prove it. Lisa's office phone rang. The local news station. We've heard reports of discrimination at Riverside Private School. Care to comment? No comment. Lisa hung up. Her cell phone buzzed immediately. Marcus. The school called. Said reporters are sniffing around. Lisa, what did you do? What they've been doing is illegal. It's going to follow her forever. Every school, every application. Being treated like a second-class citizen would follow her longer. Silence. Then, need any help? Lisa blinked. What? You heard me. Jasmine's my daughter too. Nobody messes with her future. That afternoon, parents began arriving at Lisa's office. Each brought stories, evidence, years of quiet acceptance broken by one mother's stand. They told us it was cultural sensitivity, one father said. Making sure our kids got familiar foods. My daughter asked for salad once, another mother added. They said she wouldn't like it. Lisa's evidence wall grew. Photos, documents, testimonies. Her phone buzzed again. Principal Thompson. Mrs. Johnson. A word of advice. The media can be very disruptive to children's education. Is that a threat? A reminder. Stories like this can damage reputations. Everyone's reputations. Later that night, Jasmine sat doing homework at Lisa's desk while parents met in the conference room. Mom, she called out during a break. Caroline asked if I could still come to her study group, even though her mom said not to talk to me. What did you say? I said yes. Then I asked if she wanted to have lunch with me tomorrow. Lisa hugged her daughter. You're braver than I was at your age. I'm scared, Jasmine whispered. But staying quiet means they win, right? The next morning, Lisa dropped Jasmine at school. Students still stared. Some still whispered. But Caroline waited at the front steps. And she wasn't alone. 3 other students stood with her. 2 held lunch bags. We brought extra, Caroline said, in case they try to give you the wrong food again. Jasmine's smile could have lit up the city. Lisa's phone buzzed as she drove to work. Officer Chun. Got those additional complaints, she said, and Ruth's documents. The department's taking this seriously now. Thompson's threatening media exposure. Let him. Sometimes sunlight's the best disinfectant. At lunch, Lisa received a photo from Jasmine. She sat at a table with Caroline and the others, all sharing food from their lunch bags. Behind them, Principal Thompson watched, his face dark with anger. Another text arrived from an unknown number. I'm a teacher at Riverside. Have records of official lunch policies. Meeting after school? Then another, my kids went there last year. Have proof of same treatment. Still have receipts. And another, local NAACP chapter here. Heard about your fight. Need help? Lisa saved each number. Started a new group text. Because Thompson was right about one thing. Stories like this could damage reputations. Especially when they were true. And this story? It was about to get a lot louder. The cafeteria worker's hands shook as she handed Lisa the paper. They stood in the empty school parking lot at 6 a.m., streetlights still glowing in the dawn. It's the official instruction sheet, she whispered. Principal Thompson makes a sign at every semester. Lisa unfolded the paper. There, in black and white, meal distribution guidelines. A detailed chart showing exactly which students received which meals, categorized by what they called demographic considerations. He'll know it was me, the worker said, glancing over her shoulder. I'll protect your identity, Lisa promised, quickly photographing the document. Her phone buzzed. A message from Jasmine. They changed the locks on the cafeteria doors. Caroline says they're checking IDs before letting kids in for lunch. Then another message from Ruth. Just got served with a cease and desist. They're threatening to sue for sharing confidential business information. Lisa's hands clenched around her phone. Time to end this. At 11:30 a.m., she walked through Riverside's front doors. No subterfuge this time. No hiding. The security guard stepped forward. Mrs. Johnson, you're not authorized. I'm here to get my daughter. And to witness lunch service one last time, Principal Thompson appeared, almost as if he'd been waiting. Mrs. Johnson, I have explicit instructions not to allow you to see how you're still discriminating against children, even after being exposed. Students gathered in the hallway, watching. Phones raised, recording. This is private property, Thompson said. Leave, or I'll have you arrested for trespassing. Like you had Ruth fired for telling the truth? Or that cafeteria worker you threatened this morning? His face tightened. I don't know what you're talking about. The signed instruction sheet in my pocket says otherwise. Thompson stepped closer, voice low. You're disrupting these children's education, creating division where none existed. The division existed. I'm just shining a light on it. Mom? Jasmine appeared in the crowd, Caroline beside her. What's happening? Your mother is leaving, Thompson said firmly. Aren't you, Mrs. Johnson? Lisa looked at her daughter, saw the fear in her eyes, but also something else. Pride. No, Lisa said. I'm going to lunch. She walked toward the cafeteria, students parting before her. Thompson followed, calling for security. The cafeteria doors were locked. Through the windows, Lisa saw staff hurriedly covering food trays. Open the doors, she called out. Mrs. Johnson, this is your final warning. Thompson's voice carried through the now silent hallway. Lisa turned to face the gathering crowd. Students, teachers, staff, all watching. Everyone here knows what's happening, she said clearly. You've all seen it. Every day, children are being told they're worth less than others, that they deserve less. That being black means settling for whatever scraps they decide to give you. Phones kept recording. No one spoke. My daughter, Lisa continued, comes home hungry because she's ashamed to eat the food you segregate her with. Other children come home believing they deserve better meals because of their race. You're not just discriminating, you're teaching discrimination. That's enough. Thompson moved to grab her arm. Don't touch me. Lisa's voice could have cut steel. I have documented evidence of systematic racial discrimination. Signed papers, witness statements, photos, videos. She held up her phone. This ends today. Either open these doors and show everyone what's really happening in there, or I call 911. Right now. Thompson's face contorted. Security. 2 guards approached, but they moved slowly, uncertainly. Too many phones recording. Too many witnesses. Last chance, Lisa said. Open the doors. Thompson smiled coldly. Remove her. Now. The guards reached for Lisa's arms. And then Jasmine's voice rang out. Stop. Everyone turned. Jasmine stood trembling but tall. My mom's telling the truth. They give us different food, make us use different lines, tell us it's what we prefer. But they never ask what we prefer. They just decide. Caroline stepped forward. I've seen it too. It's not right. Other students began nodding, whispering confirmations. Thompson's face darkened. All of you back to class. Now. But no one moved. Lisa pulled out her phone. Typed 911. Wait, a teacher stepped forward. Mess. Martinez from English. I have documentation too. Emails about the dietary program. Instructions for separating students. So do I, another teacher said. Thompson lunged for Lisa's phone. Don't you dare. The motion knocked her back. Her head hit the cafeteria door with a crack. Gasps. More phones recording. Lisa's vision blurred, but her fingers stayed steady on her phone. Mom! Jasmine tried to run forward, but Thompson blocked her path. Anyone who doesn't clear this hallway immediately faces suspension, he announced. Lisa pressed call. 911. What's your emergency? Her voice rang through the silent hallway. I'm at Riverside Private School. I need to report an assault by the principal during an attempt to document racial discrimination. I have multiple witnesses and videos of both incidents. Thompson's face went pale. Police are on their way, Lisa continued, loud enough for everyone to hear. I suggest everyone send their videos to their parents. There's social media, anywhere that might keep them from disappearing. Phones appeared everywhere. Students typing frantically. Thompson backed away from Jasmine, from Lisa, his authority evaporating with each passing second. Sirens wailed in the distance. "It's over," Lisa said quietly. Because it was. They all knew it. The cafeteria doors would be opened. The truth would be exposed. And no child would ever again be told that discrimination was just food for their kind. Lisa caught Jasmine's eye across the hallway. Her daughter smiled through tears. Because sometimes justice comes slowly, through documents and evidence and careful planning. And sometimes it comes with sirens wailing, when a mother finally says, "Enough." Officer Chin arrived first, followed by 3 patrol cars. Red and blue lights painted the school walls as students pressed against windows watching. Mrs. Johnson, Chun took in the scene. Lisa holding an ice pack to her head, Jasmine clutching her hand, Thompson standing with arms crossed. "Want to tell me what happened?" Before Lisa could answer, phones appeared. Students crowded forward. "I have the video. Here's where he pushed her. I recorded everything." Chin held up a hand. "One at a time. First, we need statements." Thompson stepped forward. "These children should be in class. This woman is trespassing, sir." Chin's voice hardened. "Given the assault allegation, I suggest you wait for your lawyer before speaking." More police officers entered, creating order from chaos. Students were organized into groups, their video evidence logged. Teachers came forward with documents, emails, internal memos. Ms. Martinez approached with a USB drive. Every email about the dietary program. 3 years' worth. In the principal's office, now occupied by Officer Chun, Lisa described everything, from her first lunch visit to the morning's confrontation. "And you have the instruction sheet?" Chun asked. Lisa handed it over. "The worker who gave it to me fears retaliation. We'll protect their identity." Chun studied the document. "This is explicit. They actually wrote down their discrimination policy. They thought no one would challenge it." A knock interrupted them. Another officer entered with a laptop. "Ma'am, you need to see this. The videos are everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, local news picked it up. It's trending." Chin checked her phone. Department's getting flooded with calls. Media requesting statements. Lisa's phone buzzed continuously. Messages from parents, lawyers, civil rights organizations. The story was spreading like wildfire. In the hallway, she found Jasmine surrounded by friends. Not just Caroline now, but others. Some she'd never seen her daughter talk to before. "Mom!" Jasmine ran to her. "Are you okay?" "Your head." "I'm fine, baby." Lisa hugged her daughter. "Are you?" "Yeah." Everyone's being really nice now. Even kids who weren't before. Caroline stepped forward. "We're all going to tell the truth. About everything." The school board arrived looking shaken. They huddled with lawyers in the conference room, while police continued gathering statements. Thompson sat alone in his office, blinds drawn. Lisa's phone rang. "Marcus." "I saw the videos," he said. "All of them." "I'm coming to pick up Jasmine." "No need. She's safe. And she's standing her ground." A pause. "Like her mama?" Lisa smiled. "Like her daddy, too, when it matters." By afternoon, news vans lined the street. Students walked out to waiting parents, many stopping to share their stories with reporters. Officer Chin emerged from another round of interviews. "Civil Rights Division is taking over," she said. "This goes beyond the assault. They're looking at systematic discrimination, federal funding violations, possible criminal charges. What happens to the school? Emergency board meeting tonight. They'll probably try to contain the damage, but..." Chin gestured at the media circus outside. "That ship has sailed." Lisa's phone buzzed with a message from Ruth. Saw the news. Lawyer called. "They're dropping the cease and desist. Offering settlement if I sign NDA." Then another message from the cafeteria worker who'd shared the instruction sheet. More documents in the storage room. Behind the big freezer. "Get them before they disappear." Lisa forwarded both messages to Chun. On it, the officer said, "We're sealing relevant areas for investigation." A commotion drew them to the cafeteria. Police were removing boxes of documents while kitchen staff watched, some crying. "Just following orders," one worker repeated. "We just followed orders." Thompson emerged from his office, escorted by 2 officers. He stopped when he saw Lisa. "You've destroyed this school," he said quietly. "No." Lisa met his gaze. "You did that when you decided some children were worth less than others." He was led away as reporters shouted questions. Lisa found Jasmine in the library with her friends. They sat in a circle, sharing stories. Years of small injustices finally spoken aloud. They always said it was because of allergies. My mom complained once, but they said she was overreacting. I pretended I didn't want the other food, but I did. Jasmine looked up as Lisa approached. Can we stay? Just for a little while. Of course, baby. Lisa sat watching her daughter. No longer isolated, no longer ashamed. Other parents arrived, joining the circle. White parents apologizing for not seeing, not speaking up. Black parents sharing similar experiences from other schools. Her phone buzzed. A message from the NAACP lawyer. Clear civil rights violations. Class action potential. Can you meet tomorrow? Then from Officer Chun. Found more documents. This went higher than Thompson. Board members implicated. And from Ruth. Other schools have similar programs. This is bigger than Riverside. Lisa looked at the growing circle of parents and children. At the walls finally coming down. At her daughter's straight shoulders and clear eyes. Because that's what Thompson never understood. He thought he was running a school. But he was really teaching a lesson. That injustice thrives in silence. That one voice can break that silence. And that once broken, silence can never be rebuilt. Jasmine caught her eye across the circle and smiled. No longer the smile of a child trying to be invisible, but of one who had found her voice. And in that smile, Lisa saw the future. A future where no child would be separated, segregated, or shamed. A future they would build together, one truth at a time. Starting today. The emergency school board meeting was held in the gymnasium to accommodate the crowd. Parents, students, media, and community members packed the bleachers. Police officers stood at the doors, maintaining order. Lisa sat with Jasmine in the front row, surrounded by other families who'd come forward. Ruth sat on her other side, documents spread across her lap. The board chairman looked decidedly uncomfortable at his folding table. In light of recent events, he began, voice echoing through the gym, the board has made several immediate decisions. He cleared his throat. Effective immediately, Principal Thompson has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The segregated lunch program is terminated. And he paused, glancing at his lawyers. We are cooperating fully with authorities regarding all allegations of discrimination. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. That's it. Someone called out. No accountability? My son ate different food for 3 years. What about the other staff involved? The chairman raised his hands. Please. We understand your concerns. No, you don't. Lisa stood. You don't understand what it's like to watch your child being taught they're worth less than others. To see them accept discrimination as normal. Heads nodded throughout the gym. We have evidence spanning years, Lisa continued. Signed documents. Financial records. Multiple witnesses. This wasn't one person's decision. This was systematic. Ruth stood beside her, holding up files. I have every order form, every menu plan. All approved by this board. The chairman's face reddened. We relied on administrative recommendations. You relied on racism, another parent called out. And we have proof. Lisa's phone buzzed. A message from Officer Chun. State Department of Education launching full investigation. Stay by your phone. The board chairman consulted with lawyers in whispers. Finally, he returned to the microphone. The board will resign, effective immediately. An interim administration will be appointed by the Department of Education. The gym erupted. Outside, reporters swarmed as families exited. Mrs. Johnson, how long do you think this is going on? Will there be criminal charges? What happens to the students now? Lisa held Jasmine close, pushing through the crowd, when a voice rang out. Wait! Everyone wait! Caroline stood on the school steps, phone raised. I have something you should hear, she called out. From 3 years ago, she pressed play. Thompson's voice filled the air. The board understands our concerns about maintaining certain standards. The dual menu system will help manage demographic shifts while preserving the school's traditional character. Gasps. More phones recording. Where did you get that? Lisa asked. Caroline's eyes were hard. My dad was on the board then. He recorded every meeting. Said it was for protection. I found his old phone last night. The recording continued, damning evidence spilling into the night air. Board members discussing containment strategies and cultural management. Lisa's phone exploded with messages from the NAACP lawyer. This is gold. Clear evidence of intentional discrimination. From Officer Chun. Recording changes everything. Criminal investigation launching. From Ruth. Other schools calling. Similar programs exposed. The next morning, Riverside looked different. Department of Education officials roamed the halls. New cafeteria staff served the same meals to all students. Thompson's office stood empty, his name already removed from the door. But the biggest change was in the students. Jasmine sat with a mixed group at lunch, sharing food and stories. No more separate lines. No more shame. Mom, look. She pointed to the cafeteria walls where students had hung handmade signs. All food for all kids. Unity tastes better. And no more division. Lisa's phone rang. The state education commissioner himself. Mrs. Johnson. We're implementing immediate policy changes across all private schools receiving federal funding. Would you serve on our oversight committee? Before she could answer, another call. The Civil Rights Division. We're launching a nationwide investigation into similar programs. Your evidence broke this open. Messages flooded in from parents at other schools. They do it here too. Can you help us? We have proof. In the cafeteria, MS. Martinez approached Lisa. The students want to start an equality council, she said. Jasmine's been nominated to lead it. Lisa watched her daughter laughing with friends, sharing a salad someone had brought from home. Mom. Jasmine waved her over. We're planning a unity lunch. Everyone brings food to share. Will you help? Caroline jumped in. My parents want to help too. Dad's giving evidence about the board meetings. Other students gathered around, excited about change, about making things right. Lisa's phone buzzed again. Marcus saw the news, the recording, the resignations. He paused. You did good, Lisa. Real good? We did good, she corrected. All of us? Because that's what Thompson and the board never understood. They thought they could contain change, control it, manage it with separate lines and different meals. But change doesn't ask permission. It starts with one voice, one mother, one child brave enough to say, this isn't right. And once that voice rises, others follow, until the cry for justice becomes too loud to ignore. Lisa watched as students rearranged cafeteria tables, breaking down the invisible barriers that had divided them for so long. Her phone buzzed with another message from Officer Chin. Thompson in custody. Board members being questioned. This is just the beginning. Lisa smiled, watching Jasmine explain her unity lunch idea to a growing crowd of students. Because sometimes change comes slowly, through policies and investigations and careful documentation. And sometimes it comes all at once, when truth finally breaks through silence. When children learn to share more than just meals. When they learn to share justice. Hope. A future undivided. One lunch table at a time. 6 months later, Lisa stood in Riverside's cafeteria, watching students file in for lunch. The changes were immediately visible. One line, one menu. Children of all backgrounds mixing freely at every table. But the biggest change was in their faces. No more shame, no more division. Just kids being kids. Mrs. Johnson, a small voice drew her attention. A new student, recently transferred. Can I interview you for the school paper? We're doing a story on the changes. Lisa smiled. Of course. What would you like to know? How did you know it was the right time to speak up? The question took her back to that first lunch visit. The sight of different meals. The whispered comments. Her daughter's downcast eyes. Sometimes, Lisa answered, there isn't a right time. There's just a moment when staying silent becomes harder than speaking up. Her phone buzzed, a news alert. Breaking. Former Riverside Principal Thompson pleads guilty to civil rights violations. Board members face federal charges. The student peered at her notebook. And were you scared? Terrified, Lisa admitted. But I was more scared of what would happen if nobody did anything. Across the cafeteria, Jasmine sat with the Student Equality Council. They'd grown from an idea into an official organization, with chapters opening in schools across the state. Caroline waved Lisa over. We're planning the Unity Festival. Can you help with permissions? The festival had been Jasmine's idea. A A celebration of change, of coming together. Schools from across the district would participate. Lisa's phone buzzed again. Ruth, got the job? Starting as District Food Service Director next week. Gonna make sure this never happens again. Then another message from Officer Chen. Civil Rights Division expanding investigation nationwide. Your case is the template. You started something big. The student journalist was still writing. What's different now? Lisa looked around the cafeteria. At the mixed groups of students sharing meals and stories. At the new signs on the walls promoting unity and equality. At her daughter's confident smile. Everything, she said, and not enough. Because change wasn't just about one school or one lunch program. It was about teaching a new generation that discrimination, in any form, should never be swallowed silently. The cafeteria doors opened as Marcus walked in. He joined the Parent Oversight Committee, determined to be part of the solution. Ready for the hearing? He asked Lisa. She nodded. In an hour, they'd testify before the State Education Committee about implementing new anti-discrimination policies statewide. Jasmine hugged them both before they left. Good luck. Change more schools. In the car, Marcus was quiet for a moment. Remember when I said sending her here would give her opportunities we never had? Yeah, I was wrong. You gave her something better. You taught her to fight for what's right. Lisa's phone lit up with messages from other parents, other schools. Investigations started at our district. They're changing policies here too. Our kids don't have to accept discrimination anymore. At the state capitol, Lisa stepped up to the microphone. Photographs of separate lunch lines and different meals were displayed behind her. Evidence that could no longer be ignored. This isn't just about food, she began. It's about what we teach our children about their worth, about who they are and what they deserve. Legislators leaned forward. Cameras flashed. When we separate children by race, by class, by any measure, we tell them that difference means less than, that some deserve better than others. That discrimination can be served with a side of silence. She held up the original instruction sheet that had started it all. This paper lists different meals for different children. But what it really shows is how discrimination becomes policy, how racism becomes routine, how injustice becomes just another lunch menu. Her phone buzzed. A photo from Caroline. Jasmine leading a Unity Council meeting, students of all backgrounds working together. Today, you'll hear evidence of similar programs in other schools. You'll see documents and data and discrimination disguised as policy. But remember this, Lisa paused, looking at each committee member. Every number in those reports is a child. Every statistic is a student who learned they deserved less. Every policy affected not just what they ate, but what they believed about themselves. More photos appeared on the screen. The new cafeteria. Mixed groups of students sharing meals. The Unity Council in action. This is what change looks like. Not just different meals, but different mindsets. Not just new policies, but new possibilities. Her phone lit up again. Messages from parents across the country. Starting investigations here. Using your evidence as precedent. Our children thank you. Back at Riverside that afternoon, Lisa found Jasmine in the cafeteria. Students were decorating for the Unity Festival, transforming the space that had once divided them. How'd it go? Jasmine asked. They're changing the laws, Lisa said. No more separate lines. No more different meals. No more silence. Jasmine hugged her tight. You did it, Mom. No, baby. Lisa looked at her daughter, strong, proud, unafraid. We did it. All of us. Because that's what Thompson never understood. He thought he was running a school, but he was teaching a lesson. That justice starts with one voice. That change begins with one choice. That silence breaks with one truth spoken aloud. And once broken, silence can never be rebuilt, only replaced, with voices rising together, with children learning they deserve better, with a future where no one has to swallow discrimination with their lunch. Lisa watched as students continued decorating, their laughter filling the space where silence once ruled. Her phone buzzed one last time. A simple message from Officer Chun. It's really happening. Change is really coming. And Lisa smiled because she knew it already had.